I found a letter from my late mother, in which she wrote that I was not her biological son, but asked me never to reveal it, so as not to destroy the memory of the father who raised me as his own. I am 39. I live in Bloomington, Indiana. I work as a librarian at a local college. I have a wife, Celeste, 37, and a son, Noah, 6. Life is peaceful. Not perfect, but real. We read, walk in the park, watch old movies, drink mint tea. I thought I knew my history, but I was wrong. My mother, Elizabeth, died 2 years ago from Alzheimer's disease. In her last years, she didn't even recognize me. But before her memory faded completely, she gave me an old wooden box. Keep this, she said. When I'm gone, open it. This is important. I didn't open it for a long time. Not because I was afraid, but because I didn't want anything to ruin the last memories. And then I opened it. Inside was a letter. From her hand. Date, March 3rd, 2018. A month before she lost her speech. My beloved son. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And maybe you're ready to hear the truth I've been hiding my whole life. You're not my biological son. I adopted you when you were 2 months old. Your biological mother is my younger sister. She died giving birth. And I promised her, I'll raise him as my own. And no one will ever know. Your father, Robert, knew. We decided it was better for you to think of yourself as ours, so that you would have a family. And he took you in, not as an adopted child, but as one of his own. He never discriminated. He taught you to fish, to ride a bike, to say, I love you, just as if you were his own blood. I don't want you to search for your biological history, not because I'm ashamed, but because you are my son, not by blood, by choice, by love. And I ask you, never tell anyone about this, not for yourself, but for the memory of your father. He was the best man I ever knew. And I don't want anyone to say, he's not your real father, because he was. In every way that matters. With love, your mom, Elizabeth. I sat on the floor, holding the letter, and couldn't figure out, is this a lie? Is this love? Or am I really not who I thought I was for 39 years? And then I looked at the photo on the wall. Me, about 7, with my father. We're holding a fish we caught. He's smiling. I'm hugging him. And in that moment I realized, I don't know who I am, but I do know one thing. If they decided I was theirs, do I have the right to destroy it? I couldn't put the letter down. Not because I was afraid of the truth, but because I was afraid of losing myself. I started searching, not for my biological mother, not for my relatives, but for proof that it was true, that I wasn't theirs, and that they still considered me theirs. I called the local hospital where I was born, explained who I was, and asked for help finding birth records. Not for the court, not for DNA, for myself. 3 days later, the doctor sent scanned documents. One was the birth certificate of my aunt, my biological mother. Name, Emily Harper. Died from complications during childbirth. Date of death, 12 hours after the birth of her son. Son without a name. The other document was an adoption application. Date, April 15th, 1985. A month after my birth. Parents, Robert and Elizabeth Harper. Reason, death of mother during childbirth. Father unknown. Submission from child's aunt and her husband. And the third is a letter from the father to the judge. Dear Judge, I understand that we are not technically the child's parents, but we have already lost one woman. I don't want this child to lose everything. We are not asking for adoption for ourselves. We are asking for it for him, so that he has a name, so that he has a father, so that he never feels unwanted. I don't know if I could be a good father, but I know that I will be his father, even if no one else will admit it. Sincerely, Robert Harper. I read this and couldn't breathe, not because I was moved, but because I understood. He didn't just accept me. He fought for me, before the court, before the bureaucracy, before a world that could say, he's not yours. The next day, I went to his grave. He died when I was 25. I thought I was crying because of loss. Now I understand. I was crying because of ignorance. I sat down by the gravestone. The same inscription. Robert Harper, a beloved husband, a faithful father. Dad, I said aloud, you knew I wasn't yours, but you became mine anyway, and I didn't know anything about it. I couldn't say any more. I just stared at the stone, and I realized, this is not the end. This is the beginning of understanding who I am. A week later, I called my aunt, my mother's sister, who had arranged the adoption. She is 78, lives in another state. I rarely spoke to her. She was always strict, silent. Aunt Margaret, I said. I found a letter from my mother. About me being your daughter's son. Silence. I know, she said. I was there. I was in the maternity ward. And when Emily died, she told me, don't let him be an orphan. And did you ask your mother? Yes, she said. But she didn't want it at first. She was afraid you would hear from someone else. That he and Robert wouldn't be able to love you as their own. But he said, he's mine now. I saw him. And he's mine. And you. I'm glad he found you, she said. You were Emily's only legacy. And they did the right thing. Not because they hid it, but because they gave you a family. I hung up and sat there for a long time. I couldn't keep it inside any longer. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew that if I didn't tell her now, I would never tell her. And that truth would become a lie through silence. I told Celeste that evening. Not on a walk. Not in a romantic setting. Just sitting on the porch, watching the moon rise. Noah was already asleep. I have something I learned, I said, and I don't know how to say it. You're scaring me, she said. I'm not my parents' biological son, I said. My biological mother is their younger sister. She died giving birth to me, and my mother and father adopted me, and no one knew, not even me. She fell silent. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't scared. Just looked at me. And you don't think of them as yours now? No, I said. I do. That's why it hurts so much. Because I learned that they chose me. That my father fought for me to have his name. That my mother promised her dead sister, he won't be an orphan. And they did everything they could to make sure I didn't even doubt it. Why don't you want anyone to know? Because my mother asked me to, I said. Not for herself, but for my father's memory. She's afraid that someone will say, he's not your real father. And he was. In every way that matters. And you. I don't know who I am, I said. I don't know if I have a right to call myself Harper. Do I have a right to pass this name on to Noah? Am I even who I thought I was? She looked at me for a long time. Then she said, you are the same man I met 12 years ago. The one who loves to read, laughs at stupid jokes, holds me when I cry. Biology doesn't define who you are. You define who you are. But I hide it. You don't hide it to betray me, she said. You keep quiet to protect the memory of the father who raised you. And that's not a lie. It's a respectful silence. And if Noah asks, then you'll tell him the truth, she said. Not all the details. But the gist is, your grandfather wasn't my father by blood, but he was my father by heart. And that's more important. I couldn't speak. I just hug her. Very tightly. I don't want you to feel different, she said. You're my husband, and you're Noah's father. It's not a matter of blood. It's a matter of choice. A week later, I brought back an old photo. Me about 5 with my father. We're putting together a puzzle. He's holding my shoulder. I laugh. I want to hang this in the nursery, I said. So no one knows who his grandfather was. Yes, Celeste said. And sign it, the best father I ever had. But I'm not his biological grandson. But he thought of you as his own, she said. And that's all that matters. And in that moment I understood. I had not lost myself. I had found myself. Not in documents, but in love. And now I had to decide whether I would pass this story on, whether I would leave it in the shadows. I couldn't stop, not because I was looking for confirmation, but because I needed his voice. I called my mother's sister, Aunt Margaret. Aunt, I said, do you have anything from your father? Diaries? Letters? Anything he wrote? Yes, she said. I keep his old diary. He gave it to me before he died. He said, if he ever has any doubts, give it to him. A week later, I received a letter in the mail. Inside was a black diary, tattered and coffee-stained. And the note was dated April 5th, 1985, the day he first saw me. Today was the first time I saw him. 2 months old. Little. Eyes blue like his mother's. He didn't cry, just looking at me. And in that moment I knew, this is my son. Not because I will raise him, but because he recognized me. As a father. Elizabeth is afraid. She asks, can you love him as your own? I say, I already do. And it's not a choice. It's the truth. We won't tell him. Not because we are ashamed, but because he already knows the truth. He is ours. And I don't want him to ever hear, you are not theirs. Because he is ours. In every way that matters. I promised Emily, I will give him what you couldn't. A name, a family, a father. And I will keep this promise. Even if no one ever knows how it all began. I read it 3 times. I couldn't breathe. Not because I was moved, but because I saw. He didn't accept me. He recognized me. As a son. At first glance. As a person who sees not blood, but soul. Next entry. A year later. He said the first word, Dad. Not Mom. Not Grandma. Dad. And I stood there and cried. Not because I was proud, but because I understood. He doesn't teach words. He calls me who I am. And no amount of blood will change that. 5 more years later. He asked today, Dad, are you really my father? I wasn't scared. I said, yes. Not by blood, but by the fact that I'm here. That I'm raising you. That I love you. And that's enough. He nodded. And didn't ask any more. I closed the diary. I couldn't speak. I just held it like a holy relic. The next day I went to his grave. I brought the diary. I put it on the tombstone. Dad, I said, you were my father. Not because I accepted it, but because I chose it. And now I understand. I shouldn't be afraid of this truth. I should carry it. A week later I told Noah. Not everything. Just the gist. Your grandfather wasn't my father by blood, I said. But he raised me. He taught me to be a man. And he always said, you are my son. And it is true. And you're my father? He asked. Yes, I said. And even if I had not raised you, I would be your father. Because it is not about blood. It is about who is standing next to you. He hugged me. And he said, I know. You are always here. 6 months passed. I could no longer remain silent. Not because I was afraid that the truth would destroy, but because I understood silence is not respectful silence. It is fear. And he did not want me to be afraid. I sat down at the table. I took a sheet of paper. A black pen. The same one he used to write his letters. Dad, if you are reading this, then there's a world somewhere where fathers hear their sons. And I want you to hear me now. I learned the truth. Not from people. Not from documents. But from you. From your diary. From the way you wrote. He recognized me. The way you said, he is my son. Without conditions. Without doubts. Without blood. I thought for a long time whether I have the right to call myself your son. Whether I have the right to pass on your name. But now I know, you gave me this right at first sight. I didn't choose you. You chose me. And that's enough. I won't hide this story from Noah. When he's ready, I'll tell him. Not so that he doubts himself, but so that he knows, family is not about who you're related to by blood. It's about who stands by you when you fall. Who doesn't leave when everything collapses. Who says, you are mine, and means every word. You are my father. Not formally, not by documents, by choice, by love, by loyalty. And I want everyone to know, you didn't accept your son. You made him yours. I'm not apologizing for not knowing. I'm apologizing for being you. That you taught me to be a man. That you call me son, even when no one else could. And now I'm passing on. Not a name, not a last name, a choice. The choice to be a father, even when you're not asked, even when it's hard, even when you're not a blood father. Thank you for being mine, and I will always be yours. With love, your son, Alex. I didn't send a letter. I just put it in my journal, and I drove to his grave. I put the paper on the tombstone. I didn't cover it. I didn't bury it. I just left it. Let the rain, wind, and sun take it, or let it stay as a memory. A month later, I hung the photo on the wall in the nursery. Me about 7 years old, with my father. We're putting together a puzzle. He's holding my shoulder. I'm laughing. I signed it. My dad. He chose me. And I chose him. And every time Noah asks, is this really my grandfather? Asterisk, I say, yes. Not by blood, but by heart. And that's the most important thing.